All right, let's set sail for some uncharted territory today.
Sounds exciting.
We're diving deep into the Odyssey, but not in the usual way.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
We're bringing in the Enneagram. You familiar with it?
Of course, 9 personality types, all interconnected, each with its own motivations, fears, the whole shebang.
Exactly. And we're going to use that lens to decode Odysseus's journey back home.
Interesting. So not just analyzing characters, but the journey itself.
That's the idea. The places he goes, the trials he faces, seeing them as reflections of these Enneagram types.
I like it. It's like a psychological map layered onto the actual one.
Right. So it's not just about what Odysseus does, but the why behind it all.
What's pushing him from island to island, encounter to encounter?
And get this, the journey actually unfolds in reverse Enneagram order.
Oh, really? That's fascinating.
Starts with type 9
Yeah.
and goes backward from there.
Yeah.
Like Odysseus is shedding layers of himself as he gets closer to home.
It's like a peeling back of the onion, revealing what's underneath.
Okay, my Enneagram's a bit rusty. Remind me about type 9.
Sure. Type 9, the peacemaker, they're all about avoiding conflict, keeping things harmonious.
Oh,
They crave that sense of tranquility, sometimes to the point of, withdrawing or numbing out to tough emotions.
Well, where do we see that in the Odyssey?
Well, think about the land of the lotus eaters.
Okay.
Odysseus's crew gets hooked on that lotus fruit.
Right, the one that makes them forget everything.
Everything. Their homes, families, their mission. They just want to bliss out forever.
Wow, that's powerful imagery. Choosing to forget rather than face reality.
Right. And that urge to escape, that aversion to conflict, that's classic type 9 behavior.
A defense mechanism. Like, nope, not dealing with that right now.
Exactly. Shielding themselves from the world's harsh realities.
So when Odysseus drags him away from Lotus Land, what happens? Straight into a type 8 situation.
You could say that they run smack into Polyphemus, the Cyclops.
Oh yeah, the one-eyed giant with a taste for human flesh, right?
That's the one. Traps him in his cave and starts, well,
Not exactly a friendly host.
no, not at all. And type 8, the challenger, they're all about power and control.
Okay, I'm seeing the connection.
Very black and white view of the world.
Hmm.
Friend or foe. And they're not afraid to assert themselves, that's for sure.
So Polyphemus, with his brute strength, his single-mindedness, he fits that type 8 energy perfectly.
Oh, absolutely. Territorial, demands obedience, and when Odysseus blinds him, his rage. Explosive.
Calls on his dad, Poseidon, to make Odysseus' life miserable, right?
Yeah.
Talk about holding a grudge.
Classic type 8, that fixation on power, resisting any control from others.
I'm seeing the clash here. Odysseus, maybe representing a more adaptable type, outsmarts the rigid type 8.
Definitely. It's cunning versus brute force. Odysseus has to think fast, escape that wrath, but
But there are consequences.
always, that curse from Polyphemus, it sets the stage for the rest of his crazy journey.
Speaking of crazy, next up is the island of Aeolus, the god of the winds. Our source material says type 7, and I can see why.
Ah, yes. Type 7, the enthusiast. Always seeking new experiences, chasing pleasure, and absolutely cannot stand boredom.
So they're constantly on the move, like jumping from one exciting thing to the next.
You got it. So, how does a floating island ruled by the wind god fit in, you ask?
Well, yeah, it seems like a bit of a leap.
Think about the winds themselves. Unpredictable, constantly changing. They can lead to incredible places, but can also be super dangerous.
And Aeolus himself, isn't he a bit of a wild card too?
Exactly. He gives Odysseus that bag of winds to help him get home, but then...
Oh, I remember this. Odysseus' crew gets curious, opens the bag, and all hell breaks loose.
Right, all those winds unleashed, blowing them way off course. It's like textbook type 7, right?
The allure of the unknown, that impulsivity, the need for constant stimulation.
And look what happens. Chaos.
They get so caught up in the excitement, they don't think about the consequences.
And it sets them back even further from home. It's a cautionary tale about unchecked enthusiasm.
Like, hey, maybe don't chase every shiny object, especially when you've got a bigger goal.
Exactly. Sometimes you got to resist that temptation. Focus on the bigger picture.
From unpredictable winds to cannibals. Our source material connects the Laestrygonians with type 6.
Ah, the Laestrygonians, type 6, the loyalists, they're interesting. Crave security, but also anticipate danger constantly.
So it's like this push-pull thing, wanting safety, but always bracing for the worst.
You got it. And the cannibals, well, they're the extreme version of that anxiety.
Aggressive, Unpredictable, devouring Odysseus's men. Not exactly my idea of security.
Right. It's a terrifying encounter that shows the darker side of that type 6 anxiety, that hypervigilance turning into aggression.
So they strike first to avoid being struck.
Exactly. It's almost a twisted kind of security measure, trying to control their environment by eliminating any perceived threat.
And how does Odysseus, Mr. Adaptable, handle this situation?
He barely makes it out alive, let me tell you. Loses most of his ships and crew. Devastating.
Shows that even the best strategists can be overwhelmed by, like, primal fear. Right?
Oh, absolutely. When a type 6 is in full fear mode, it's a force to be reckoned with.
Okay, so from fear and aggression, we move on to enchantment. Circe's island is next, and the source links her to type 5. This is where things get interesting.
Type 5, the investigator. All about knowledge, competence, and staying independent.
Okay, but she turns men into pigs. How does that fit in?
Think about her powers. She's isolated on her island, in total control of her environment with magic.
Master of her craft.
Exactly. That need for autonomy, that deep knowledge, that's pure type 5.
And the whole pig transformation thing.
Well, it's a bit extreme, but it reflects that tendency to detach from emotion, to see those they think are intellectually inferior as, well, less than human.
Like, you're just a subject for my experiment.
Yeah, something like that. But she doesn't turn Odysseus into a pig, remember?
Right. He resists her magic.
And she's intrigued by him, sees him as an equal, someone worthy of her respect.
So even type 5s can connect, but only on their own terms.
It's gotta be with someone they deem worthy. Someone who can keep up intellectually.
Makes sense. So Odysseus outsmarts the Cyclops, resists the sorceress. What's next? A spa day.
Huh. Not quite. He's about to face the nadir of the Enneagram, a trip to Hades, the underworld.
Okay, things just got real.
This is where it gets symbolic and maybe a little creepy.
I mean, we're talking about the realm of the dead.
Exactly. Hades represents that shadowy space between type 5 and type 4. It's about introspection, confronting fears, exploring the unknown.
So it's deeper than just ghosts and monsters.
Oh, yeah. It's about facing our shadow selves, the parts we hide from, the things we fear.
Heavy stuff.
Odysseus has to confront his past, his losses, even his own mortality before he can move on.
And this is something our type 9 back at the start would totally avoid, right? It's like he's being forced to deal with these difficult emotions head on.
It's like he's deconstructing himself, stripping away those defenses, confronting the raw truth of who he is.
And only then can he reemerge, transformed, and ready for what's next.
Exactly. The journey's just beginning.
Okay, I'm hooked. What other Enneagram-infused challenges await Odysseus?
Well, after the underworld, he encounters the sirens, those mesmerizing creatures whose song lures sailors to their deaths. They represent type 4.
Ah, the sirens. Such a captivating and terrifying encounter. I remember reading about them and being completely enthralled. But how do they connect to type 4? It seems like they're all about beauty and this deep longing.
Exactly. Type 4, the individualist, they are drawn to beauty, depth, authenticity. They embrace those emotions, even the painful ones. And yeah, they often feel a sense of longing for something just out of reach.
Okay, I'm seeing it. The siren song, it's temptation,
Right.
right? Promising something irresistible, even if it leads to destruction.
Yeah.
Like they're tapping into that core yearning that type 4s feel.
It's such a beautiful metaphor for their struggle, drawn to intensity, to those deep human experiences, even if it means risking their well-being. And Odysseus, his strategy with the beeswax and being tied to the mast, it's brilliant.
It's like he acknowledges those feelings, those desires, but he's not letting them consume him.
Right, finding that balance between experiencing those emotions and, self-preservation. He knows if he gives in, he's doomed.
A powerful lesson. I can relate to that feeling of being pulled in opposite directions, wanting to experience everything, but knowing some things are too dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. It's a universal struggle. And the Odyssey reminds us that even a hero like Odysseus, strong and cunning as he is, has to deal with those same temptations.
So after the sirens, what's next on this Enneagram-fueled adventure?
He faces another impossible choice. Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla, that 6-headed monster who snatches sailors from their ships.
Oh yeah, I remember her.
And Charybdis, this massive whirlpool that swallows everything in its path. Talk about a rock and a hard place.
Sounds like a classic type 3 dilemma to me.
You got it. Type 3, the achiever. All about success, competence, and image. Driven to excel, to be the best. And their biggest fear, failure.
But how does sailing between a 6-headed monster and a giant whirlpool connect to that fear of failure?
Well, think about it. He has to choose. Lose a few men to Scylla, or risk losing everyone to Charybdis. There's no winning here. He's going to fail no matter what.
That's a tough one. Like
Right.
in real life when you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Exactly. And how Odysseus handles it, choosing the lesser of two evils. That's pure type 3. Pragmatic, adaptable, willing to make those tough calls to reach their goals, even if it means accepting some degree of failure.
It's like they're always calculating, right? Assessing the risks, trying to find that path to success, but knowing they can't completely avoid the possibility of failing.
Right. And here, success for Odysseus is simply surviving. He can't avoid loss altogether, but he can make a calculated choice to maximize his chances of getting home.
Speaking of home, wasn't there a point where Odysseus is tempted to just stay away, offered everything he could ever want?
You're talking about Calypso, the nymph who keeps Odysseus on her island. Now, that is an encounter that sheds light on type 2, the giver.
Calypso, the one who offers him immortality. I mean, after everything he's been through, talk about tempting.
Right. And that's classic type 2. Generous, nurturing, always taking care of others, expressing love through acts of service, through giving. And they want that same love and appreciation in return.
But it sounds like there might be a shadow side to all that generosity. A need for control, maybe?
You're picking up on something important. Type 2s, in their desire to be loved and needed, yeah, they can sometimes get possessive, manipulative even.
So Calypso, offering Odysseus immortality and paradise, she's trying to control him, keep him there forever.
It's definitely one way to see it. She's offering everything he could want, but on her terms. Stay with me, she's saying, and you'll be happy. Leave, and you'll face hardship and uncertainty.
And Odysseus, being Odysseus, chooses hardship and uncertainty. He turns down immortality for a chance to return home, even if it means more challenges.
And that rejection, it crushes Calypso. It really shows that vulnerability of the type 2, the pain they feel when their love isn't returned the way they expect.
It's like a reminder that even the most well-intentioned giving can have strings attached. And sometimes, the most loving thing is to let go, to let others make their own choices, even if it hurts.
Beautiful insight. And from the emotional depths of Calypso's island, Odysseus washes ashore on the island of the Phaeacians. This is where we encounter type 1, the reformer.
The Phaeacians, known for being incredibly hospitable, welcoming strangers, helping those in need. But type 1, I always associate them with being principled, striving for perfection. How does that fit in?
Well, type 1s have a strong sense of right and wrong. They strive for justice, fairness, order in the world. They have high standards for themselves and others, and they really believe in doing things the right way.
So their hospitality, it's a way of creating that just and harmonious world they crave.
Exactly. They see helping Odysseus as their moral duty, providing food, shelter, and eventually a ship to get him home. Their actions reflect their values, their belief in doing what's right no matter what.
And their shipbuilding skills, that attention to detail, the craftsmanship, it all speaks to their striving for perfection.
Absolutely. Type 1s have high standards for everything they do. They take pride in their work. Meticulous, detail-oriented, and they want everything to be just so.
It's fascinating how each of these encounters, from the Lotus Eaters to the Phaeacians, shows a different side of the human experience, different ways of being in the world.
It really highlights the power of the Enneagram. It's not about putting people in boxes, but about understanding those motivations, the fears and desires that drive us.
And by seeing it play out in the Odyssey, it's like we get a deeper understanding not just of the story, but of ourselves.
And that brings us to the end of Odysseus's journey through the Enneagram. He finally returns home to Ithaca, transformed by his experiences. He's faced his shadows, resisted temptation, and learned so much about himself and the world.
Odysseus returns home changed. But what about us, the listeners? What do we take away from all this? It seems like a big jump from ancient Greece to, our lives today.
Oh, it is a big jump, but that's the beauty of these archetypes, right? These patterns of behavior, they transcend time and culture. Just like Odysseus faced his inner Cyclops and Siren, we encounter our own versions of these types every single day.
So you're saying these Enneagram types, they aren't just characters in a story. They're reflections of, people we know, maybe even parts of ourselves.
Exactly. And remember how Odysseus journeyed through the Enneagram in reverse. What if our own path to, personal growth involves a similar process, confronting and then integrating these different aspects of ourselves?
So someone who's a strong type 2, always giving, always helping, maybe they look at Calypso and think, am I holding any invisible strings when I offer help?
That's a great example. Or a type 8, someone who's used to taking charge, they might see Polyphemus and ask themselves, is my need for control pushing people away? Each encounter in the Odyssey becomes this mirror, reflecting our own potential blind spots.
And the source material actually asks the listener, which encounter resonates with you most strongly? I love that as a prompt for self-reflection.
It's a great one, right?
Hmm.
Which challenge speaks to your deepest fears? The siren's seductive pull, the Lestrygonian's aggression, the need for control like Circe? Recognizing those patterns is the first step towards growth.
It makes me think our own personal odysseys aren't about sailing across the sea, but navigating those internal landscapes, facing our own inner monsters and temptations.
And the Odyssey gives us a framework for that inner journey, right? Odysseus' struggles, they become a blueprint for our own. We see that even a hero faces setbacks, makes mistakes, but keeps going.
And with the Enneagram, we get even more specific guidance. We see how each type might approach a challenge, their strengths and weaknesses. It's like having a personalized strategy guide for self-discovery.
The source material doesn't say this explicitly, but I think it's there. The Odyssey is a story about homecoming, not just returning to a physical place, but to our truest selves.
And just like Odysseus had to face those 9 different islands to get home, maybe we have to integrate those 9 different aspects of ourselves to find, like, wholeness.
Beautifully put. It's not about erasing parts of ourselves, but understanding them, accepting them, using that knowledge to become more complete, more balanced.
So to our listener, we leave you with this. As you reflect on Odysseus' journey, what resonates? What challenges do you see in your own life? And how can understanding the Enneagram help you navigate those challenges and find your way home? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep sailing towards that truest version of yourself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, may your journey be full of self-discovery and growth.